Welcome back to another edition of Marco's Minute. Every week I'm going to take a look at a handicapping angle, theory, or trend that I like to use in my daily handicapping so that it can help you too. This week I'm going to talk about short-term stats versus long-term stats. And as we get later in the football season, I think this is a very important tool. Now, most people will tell you they like to see long-term results. The more data, the better it is. And for most things, I have to agree with that. However, during the course of a football season, this goes for both pro, college, teams are going to go through ebbs and flows for different reasons. I like to put more emphasis on the last 4 weeks, what a team is doing stat-wise, as opposed to looking at season-long numbers. Season-long numbers take into account everything, but sometimes there are totally different dynamics with teams from the beginning of the season to later. One of those things could be, if we're talking college football, you might have a team that has a young offensive line, no experience to start the season. Well, that team's not going to run the football well, and they're not going to protect the quarterback as well at the beginning of the season. So the offensive numbers are not going to look good at the beginning of the season. But as that team matures and that new offensive line gets that cohesive feeling and starts to play better, you'll see stats start to change. If you're looking at just the last 4 weeks, you're getting a better indicator of what that team is truly doing right now as opposed to season-long numbers. Also, injuries take a big toll. A lot of times teams will have injuries at the beginning of the season that might hurt them with their stats, and then they get those guys back and they're playing better, or vice versa. If you're just looking at season-long stats again, it's mixing everything together and you don't see where the ebb and flow of the season's going. And finally, looking at teams that play well early in the season that are lesser teams. And when I say lesser teams, I'm talking about not your blue chip programs. We see this so often. A good example, a lot of times, a team from the Big Ten, say Minnesota. They play well early in the season. Combination of A, they play a softer schedule, B, they've got some talent, but they're not deep. And as the season progresses, these teams that are not blue chip programs, when they start to get nicked up, banged up, they got to go to the second level players. Well, the lesser schools to the blue chip programs, there is a huge drop off from the starters to the backups in those programs. The big programs, they got blue chippers up and down the roster. They can just plug and play. Whenever the lesser teams start to get dinged up, the talent level drops off dramatically. And that's why a lot of times later in the season, you'll see these teams that had good stats at the beginning, they're really going to be playing much worse later, and you need to look at that last 4. I hope this helps you out. This is also an angle to use in basketball, more so college basketball more than any, because college basketball, you have players that just don't stay at school for 4 years anymore. So there's a lot of turnover. You'll see teams every year starting with a new 5 a lot of times at these big programs, but by season's end, they're solid. Case in point, think back a few years ago with Memphis when they started 5 freshmen and ran themselves right to the Final Four. Hey, that's it for this week's Marco's Minute. I hope you found it helpful. As always, best of luck with all of your wagers. I'll be back next week. We'll take a look at another angle here on Marco's Minute.